The Sound Off Podcast. The show about podcast and broadcast. Starts now.
What kind of radio did you listen to Montreal radio on, and what stations did you listen to growing up?
Growing up in our house, it was CKGM. It was the top 40 station that everyone listened to, and so it was always on at CKGM in Montreal during the 1970s. And then as I got a little older, I drifted over to CHOM and FM 96, which was a great powerhouse station. And of course, as a kid, and I mentioned this a couple of days ago on the air, that when it came to school nights, my mother was pretty strict about having me go to get to bed at a certain hour, but she would either allow me to leave the light on and read or listen to the radio. And so I used to listen to the Expos broadcasts and the Canadians to that play-by-play in bed at night during the weekend. So Dave Van Horn and Dick Irvin both had big impact on me when I was younger.
So when it comes time to make a decision and you graduate from high school, and forgive me, I don't remember the high school that you went to. I feel like I should know all this stuff because we would talk about this stuff on the radio. Like I know Terry went to Pierrefonds.
CHOM.
And yeah, where did you go?
I went to Father McDonald High School in Saint Laurent. That doesn't exist anymore, so it's under another name right now. But a lot of Father Mackers, as we call them, stayed in touch and reached out to me on the air over the years.
Did you go to McGill?
Not officially, but I took various evening courses at McGill, continuing education courses. And I actually got my start behind a microphone at McGill and their campus radio station back in the early 1980s. I had a weekly radio show at the campus station on Tuesday nights. I think it was from 6 to 8. And it was great. So it was my first chance to sort of get behind a microphone on a regular basis and see if I was any good at this thing.
And I gather you were good because, eventually you did wind up in radio.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story about those days of doing shows at McGill. And because I was such a fan of FM 96, there was an evening announcer by the name of Richard Burrell. I called him one night on the request line, introduced myself, and I said, look, thinking of pursuing a career in radio, and I made a demo tape for my shows at Radio McGill. Would you listen to it? Tell me what you think. He invited me down the very next night. And when you're in your early 20s and you get invited to a radio station that you listen to, it's winning the lottery. So I went down, and I think he got off at 11 o'clock and came downstairs and brought me up, and we went into the production studio and he popped the tape into the machine and listened to it for, I had 3 minutes worth of clips. And he turned to me and he said, I hear some potential there. And I think you'd pursue this. So give it a go. And there's stuff there to work with. I said 25 demo tapes there. I think the demo was like 4 minutes long because the advice was, they're going to decide in the first minute whether or not they like your sounds. And I got one job offer, and it was in Northern Ontario in Kirkland Lake.
And eventually you worked your way through some other Ontario stations before you got back to Montreal?
Yeah. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, we agreed we'll give it a 5-year plan, right? I was in Kirkland Lake for about 1.5 years. And then, I worked my way down to Guelph, just outside of Toronto, of course, and I did 2 years there, did the afternoon show in Guelph, and then I got a buddy I knew was working a swing shift in Ottawa at a station called 54 Rock, which became The Bear. So he says, why don't you send a tape now? And so I got his swing shift, which was, I think, 3 evenings a week, and a couple of weekend shifts. I got his swing shift in Ottawa at 54 Rock, and I got his apartment as well. I took over the lease. It all worked out. And I think I got his couch.
Who was that?
That was Don Landry, who's spent a lot of time working in sports radio.
So, and by the way, that station was owned by Standard Broadcasting. It was on a weird spot on the dial at 54 because 580 was really the juggernaut right beside it, which was CFRA. 540 did not have as much power, but it played some great songs.
We did. Yeah, we did. There's a terrific guy there. Gord Taylor was the program director at the time, and he took me under his wing. He could not have been nicer to me for the time I was there, but I was only there for 6 months because I started in, I guess it was January of 89 at 54 Rock, and I loved it. I loved being in Ottawa. I loved the vibe. It was great people there. Another person there, I don't know if you know him, Gary Obey.
Oh, yeah. Magic.
Magic. Yeah, exactly. And anyways, come, I guess, to late May, I got a call from the program director at CHOM and said, hey, we hear you're looking to come home. We have a spot for you. And they offered me the all-night show at CHOM. And I started in June of 89.
Ian McLean gives you a call? I don't know if this is public knowledge. Well, I don't know if I'm speaking from hearsay, but I think Ian was at one point offered a job at 54 Rock in Ottawa to go from. Yeah.
Is that right?
So it was good to know that you were within earshot of him and you found your way back and did a couple of years of all nights. It's funny, as we go through this, there's things I don't remember. I don't remember you doing the all-night show.
I started in June of 89, and then I guess it was June of 1990. They bumped me up from all nights, and I took over the electric lunch hour and the midday shift. Well, that was a fantastic shift. I did that for 5 years.
I seem to recall it being sort of a big day where there's a number of shifts, because I think Chris Michaels was let go, and Al Gravel was let go the same day. Pete Marrier came in to do drive, and you were going to do middays. That's quite the overhaul.
Yeah. It was a big change of the station. And it's funny, Pete and I reminisce about that, because as I was doing the weekend morning shift here at CJAD last 6 or 7 years, Pete was down the hall on weekend mornings at the show. And so he'd always pop in. He'd pop in to see me during the 6:30 news, and then I'd go see him after.
But at the same time, I don't remember CHOM being in any particular ratings trouble in that era where it would merit the changes. I think it was really just about, let's bring some chemistry into the building and bring some new life, and let's get into the 90s.
I think that was the whole idea behind it. And it's funny you mentioned Christine, because she's been a regular contributor on my weekend morning show here in Montreal, and she's been great. And she actually trained me on the board when I first got the job at CHOM.
A couple of years later, 1992, you get married. So
yes. And I want to apologize for not inviting you to
There's no reason why I should have been invited to the wedding. Absolutely no reason.
Were you at CHOM?
I was, but I just started. I barely started. But I will tell you a story about what happened that day. Is it May or June you got married in?
May 23rd, 1992.
So I remember it completely. So it was a Friday. I'd gone out. We'd all gone out, at least those who weren't getting married the next day. And we're at Terry's house. The limo shows up, and the limo gives me a ride back to my place. And then I show up back at my place looking completely disheveled and sleep off the rest of the day, and everyone else has to go to a wedding.
I always remember the night before my wedding, because it was also Carson's final night.
That's right. Oh yeah, I remember. And with Bette Midler, and I remember Ian McLean came over the next day, and we watched it a couple times with Terry and how the whole thing was executed. And then we discussed whether or not we should be adding the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Of course we should add the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And we never did add the Red Hot Chili Peppers until much later. It was just the bizarre conversations that we had back in rock radio in 90. And as the 90s went through, CHOM goes through some stuff. Most notably, Terry leaves. And John Derringer comes in. And you and Peppermint Patty actually got together and did a great little show between 1:30 and 2 every Thursday. I think it was an entertainment type show. So, it wasn't just rock radio and spinning records and short, concise breaks that you were doing, but there was some other, what we called foreground back then, even though it didn't really exist, but there was some other programming that we began to divest into.
Yeah, we were both pop culture junkies. And so I don't know how that show came about. Maybe we pitched it to be in, I can't remember now. But we called it The Buzz. We played a lot of clips, and there was a lot of splicing audio tape. And then, of course, I guess at 2:00, we started the afternoon show and went from 2 to 6. Heidi would leave, and then Neil Christian would come in, and we'd do rock and roll news.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people think it was just you're doing the midday show. It's just short breaks. It was just way more than that. I will say that you taught me how to do short breaks and to get the break down to a concise, complete thought. So thank you for teaching me that along the way, because if not, I wouldn't have made it in radio.
I like to know, I always remind people that we were so spoiled with our location on Green Avenue in Montreal, which was exactly a short 2-block walk from the Montreal Forum. That's why we're so lucky to have everyone who performed at the Montreal Forum. That's
as Patty said, the two best jobs in the city were you play for the Canadians or you worked at CHOM.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a great era too, between 92 and 95. Expos were doing well. CHOM was doing well. The Canadians won the Stanley Cup. I got to work at CHOM in that particular period with you, Pete, Terry. Derringer comes in for a time. Patty's there. Paul Beauregard evenings. And I started to add up all the people in that area and how often and how long they work for. Too Tall included. We'll throw in his 39 years in radio. It's a combined 350 years of radio experience with all these people.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of great people, a lot of stories, and just a lot of talent in that building over the years. But yeah, when I got back from my honeymoon, I got a phone call from Blair Bartram, who broke the news to me that Terry had left. And it was going down the street to the competition and changed things up a little bit in 1990.
Yeah, that changed the trajectory of CHOM for the next decade and eventually led to it being sold to Standard, I think, in 1999-ish. But I want to ask you, when did you leave CHOM? Because that I don't remember.
I left CHOM in 1997, I believe. and then I started working shortly thereafter at Mix 96 and I took over the midday slot there. And I did mornings for about 3 years with Cat Spencer.
And how weird was it and how accepted was it just to go to the mix? Terry'd already done it, so there's a bit of a blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're doing it, and there's just tons of shared listening between CHOM and Mix 96 at the time. How'd you find it?
There was a little more scrutiny, I think, with your breaks and how tight they wanted them to be, and a lot of talking over ramps, and they wanted the energy level up a little bit more. But I managed to adjust and enjoyed my time there immensely.
And some unusual combinations that I would never think of, but you and Cat Spencer together, wow.
Yeah, you know what? I was doing middays from 10 to 3, and the Cat was doing 3 to 7 in the afternoon. So we do a little crossover break. And then as I left, and Blair told us when he offered us the job, he says, you guys were sounding great just on those 3 minutes crossing over, and the chemistry was great. You're both funny, so I want you to take over the morning show.
It's phenomenal because, I mean, it's a hot AC station, and it was 2 guys, and a lot of people would just think in their heads, well, we have to get a third. Maybe we'll mix it up in this particular way, but here are 2 schooled jocks who have it, but the chemistry of the 2 of you together just worked. So why did it work so well with him?
I think we were great friends because even as we had our separate shifts, we would always go out together for lunch and talk radio. And we just really hit it off. We're still great friends now. And I have to mention too, what really helped us because our ratings were good and we had a blast doing the morning show was that Maureen Holloway was doing, I think, 3 segments a morning or 2 segments a morning with us. She was a part of the success of there in the morning.
Maureen Holloway was going across the country and you got 3 breaks. There would be 2, for instance, in Halifax. We had 1 in Winnipeg, 2 in Edmonton, and as well just doing the work in Toronto as well. And she would go across companies. I think she was working for Chorus at the time, actually, but she would do breaks in Standard. So that was contra, or you'd pay cash to have Maureen on the show.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about that.
I did because I, for years, kept saying, I need 1 more Maureen Holloway break. But I could never get it. Somebody else in another market would have to give their break up in order for me to get it. So I was trying to squeeze you out of a break with Maureen so I could have another one somewhere else. And
she was gold.
Absolutely. And I think there was only one other change that happened. And I think it was in 2002 when the purchase of CHOM to Standard happened. Did you get moved out of mornings?
Not with that changed. They brought in a new program director, I think in 2003 or 2004, and he made some changes. And so they let me go there. And then I was picked up by Mark Dickey, who brought me over to 940 News, which was an upstart radio station, a talk radio, news talk radio station to challenge CJAD.
Okay, I'm not letting the moment go, Ken, because you got fired. And I was like, who fires Ken Connors?
Well, someone did.
But I'm here to tell you, and you knew it, like the exchange is, as far as I heard and know, and I just want you to confirm it was, you're firing me. And because it was one of those things that just didn't make sense.
No, I guess at the time, the new program director wanted to put his stamp on the station, and he decided that stamp would involve changing the morning show and the morning show personnel. But it was too bad because the ratings were really strong. I remember some of the salespeople were coming up and telling me, like, we're not number 1, but we're a really strong number 2. Yeah. And we're making money. And there's no need for this, but that's radio.
Yeah. And I mention it because it was a big takeaway for me as I later became a program director in terms of, when you make a change and how expensive it is. And it doesn't always have to be at moving somebody out of the building. It will very, very, very likely doesn't even have to happen at all. And it doesn't have to be radio. It could be baseball. It could be hockey. We see it a lot of times in hockey where you got to move the center. We need a third line, whatever. We got to fix the power play. And managerially, the rush line is if you choose not to decide, you've still made a choice. I just looked at that thing going, wait, just don't touch it. It's fine. I don't know why we feel the need to change things and move the pen from the left side to the right side of the desk, or I'm going to change the whole morning show today. So I mentioned that just to point out that had an impact on my career and making decisions as program directors. We don't always have to do what we think we need to do.
Yeah.
Leave
well. Yeah. Don't reinvent the wheel. Leave well enough alone and just run with it.
And Mark Dickey, who we'd worked with at CHOM at the time, was over at Chorus Zone 940. And listen, not the worst thing in the world because I wound up working for Chorus too. And there you are at 940, which was a news wheel. And so now, and I mentioned earlier the segments that you've done where you're writing rock and roll news and the buzz, but now it's an easier transition over to the news wheel.
I don't know if it was necessarily an easier transition. I learned a lot. I did the morning show there for a couple of years, I believe. We were working in Place Bonaventure And there was a lot of different changes with ownerships and what have you. So I worked at 940 News, and then I got bumped over to take over the afternoon show on Q92. And then finally Q92 and 940, Chorus sold all their English radio properties to Kojiko, and 92.5 Q92 suddenly became the Beat 92.5. So I made the transition so I went from 940 News to Q92. 92.5 the Beat, and stayed there. So I was in that building really under that roof for about 11 years.
What was it like working over there? That's the only building in Montreal that I really don't have any experience working in, although it was Chorus. I've only been in there one time. And so what was like
Place Bonaventure,
at the Chorus office in Place Bonaventure, what was that culture like and that station like? Because you worked at CHOM, you worked at Mix, and now you're on what we always thought was the dark side.
It was a little different. I enjoyed working there. You're right, the heart of downtown. I enjoyed my time there.
And your next move after that?
I was happy at the Beat 92.5. I was doing weekend mornings, and I was the older guy at a younger, hipper station. I became basically the assistant program director. Everything that was happening at the radio station came by my desk. And one day, Chris Berry at CJAD, the program director, he called. He said, "Hey, Dave Fisher is retiring. How would you feel about coming over?" And I started in August of 2016. And I was very flattered. You get to a certain age in this business, and not a lot of people are offering you jobs. And I was flattered by the fact that they thought I'd be a good fit to take over and fill those shoes, because this guy was loved. And he is a broadcast legend, the late Dave Fisher.
Tell me about working weekends, because I've always thought, I'd love to do weekends, but I also like to stay out late Fridays and Saturdays. So I'm not sure that would ever work for me, but it works for you.
It didn't work for me. Well, you just have to do it. And I was no stranger to doing the morning show. As it was with Dave Fisher, as opposed to all the other announcers at CJAD, all the other show hosts, I did not have a booker. And so that was a big part of the job, part of the contract negotiations and salary. It's a lot of work. And it was a nice reminder about the power of community radio, working at CJAD 800. There's a very, very strong, loyal audience there. And it's a historic station.
And then when you get in there, you're now seeing all the people that you either replaced, were replaced by, or worked against in one place.
I know. I know, because they brought me in for a big announcer staff meeting to introduce me. And it was like going to a high school reunion. I said, I'm not a stranger to any of them. So it was kind of like going home in a way, which was nice.
Yeah. Aaron Rand would be there.
Andrew
Carter, Al Gravel,
Tommy Schoenmaker. Yeah.
Wow. It's almost like the Hall of Fame of Montreal radio.
Oh, yeah. And there were some legends. Trudy Mason, of course. Trudy's been there for forever, and she's glue that holds that place together in that newsroom. What a talent.
I got 4 years in that building. And
Did you?
That's the thing, Ken. I was there from 2002 to 2006. And I was APD at CHOM.
Oh, right.
And then somewhere like 2003 or 4-ish, you got let go. And that happened like right across the hallway from me. I'm like, okay. So that's why, again, that had an impact, because, I was talking with the salespeople and dealing with, everyone in the building who had comments about that sort of thing. So I played therapist.
Counselor.
Yeah. One person walked out and goes, "Who fires Ken Connors?" I'm like, I don't know. Just that's what that was like. But again, I was door open, door shut. I had the office across the hall from there. But again, sometimes that can speak to too many offices and too many doors. It's great to have one, but it felt like there was a lot of doors in that hallway. And it was a strange time as well, because it takes a amount of time for a merger to come together. And I had to let friends go over at CHOM that you and I are cordial with, and friendships went in the garbage, and that's what happens. But, as time goes by, we all find a way to get back together, which I think is really nice.
Yeah. And I tell people too, because I've gone through it a couple of times over 40 years. It's like getting hit by a bus and you don't expect it. And when you least expect it, someone comes knocking on your door and offers you a job.
How's Montreal radio different than any other market in Canada?
How's Montreal radio different from any other? Well, yeah, we're unique here. We have our own set of problems in this province. I always tend to defend the city from people who've gone and moved away. So, a lot of us have still stayed here and made it our home. Montreal radio is unique. We have a certain bond with the Francophone community as well. It's just got a certain je ne sais quoi, if you allow me that phrase.
I will. What's wrong with the Canadians these days?
It's the power play. They keep doing that long drop pass back, and it drives me crazy.
What are you going to miss the most about radio?
The fact that when something happens and you can't wait to get on the air to talk about it, that outlet, I think they'll miss that the most. I was telling someone the other day, I don't think there was ever a day where I didn't want to go into work. You could have felt crap, you're a little under the weather, you're in a bad mood, but I never not want to go into work or didn't look forward to the show. As soon as you put the headphones on, you crack the mic, the adrenaline starts to rush and you're off and running. I'll miss that. I'll miss that little charge getting behind the microphone.
I didn't know you played golf.
I picked it up when I turned 40. Both my wife and I decided we were spending too much time in the malls on the weekends. And so we took up golf around the corner from our house. There was a golf course. And no, we love it. We're not the best golfers, but we just love being outdoors.
I feel like something I should know is what Lorena did for work. I know I've heard that she's retired now, but what did she do?
Out of McGill, she landed a job at IBM, and she was a project manager there for close to 50 years. So we were always both working and commuting downtown. We lived on Nuns Island together for a while.
I remember that. I remember your place in Nuns Island.
I enjoyed living on Nuns Island. It's a 5-minute drive into town. Very convenient. But we wanted to be closer to my mom, who was living in Saint Laurent and aging. So we bought a house in Saint Laurent.
Wonderful. Are you nervous at all about the time, or are you going to just have too much to do? Because everybody I talk to who's retired is like, I'm busier than ever. Are you planning on being busier than ever, or are you worried that you're going to have too much time in your hands?
No, I'd like to find a middle ground there. I don't think I'll be very busy, but I'm just going to take it nice and easy. I'm going to get involved in a couple of different things to keep me busy, and we're going to travel a lot. And looking forward to that.
I think that's great because it's like, oh, Ken's retiring, but he's still going to be around, which is perfect.
They always say you need to find something that you can focus on once you retire, and it's something you enjoy. Well, that you can do every now and then. It was right under your notes. I like being on the air, so I like fill in every now and then just to stick my toe back in the water.
Travel destinations?
Oh, plenty. My wife's brother lives in California. He has for about 20 years now in Long Beach. A lot of Quebecers go to Florida. We go to California.
Well, we have a direct flight to Palm Springs from Winnipeg.
I know. Well, that's the thing. When we golf and we get paired up with people, 9 times out of 10, they're Canadians. You'd love it in Palm Springs because the casinos are full of what they call the heritage music acts.
Oh, yeah.
Richard Marx is playing at the casino tonight.
Well, yeah, you can get sticks with lead singer Gowan.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Most of the hard rock acts and people with long hair who we used to champion on CHOM in the early 90s are now playing in the casinos. They've got no hair and half the members that they had before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's always someone to see. They got a lot of talent there. What else? Argentina's on my wife's list. And we might even tackle a trip to Japan.
Ken, it's good to know that you're retiring, but you're still going to be around the radio and you're not completely leaving it. And we'll always be able to give you a listen on CJAD when you're filling in and whatnot. So congratulations are in order because most of the time I start these shows with, were you pushed or did you jump? But it's nice to know that it is on your own volition. Thanks so much for doing this, Ken. I appreciate it.
Oh, Matt, you're welcome. It's great to talk to you. Great to see you. Thanks for the invitation.
The Sound Off Podcast is written and hosted by Matt Kundle. Produced by Evan Serminski. Edited by Chloe Emo Lane. Social media by Aiden Glassy. Another great creation from the Sound Off Media Company. There's always more at soundoffpodcast.com.